Chapter 17. Orderly Succession. I can still recall, nearly 40 years later, that moment when I realized that my son would be the heir apparent. Twice I was told his future during blessings. But it was only as I watched my second son Ezekiel playing with his cousin Gregorio that it suddenly struck me forcefully that my son, by the traditions of Astolia, should not be referred to as the heir apparent. Gregorio was, by the natural order of things, the next king of Astolia. Theo must have noted my discomfort, because he assured me that I was not only the rightful king, but that my son was to be the next king. This is, Theo cautioned me, the will of deity. Gregorio will discover great happiness in his future, and will be content to allow Isaiah to wear the crown and feel the burdens placed so heavily upon the sovereign. He will also fervently pray to deity that Ezekiel will become the keeper of the soul of Astolia. I knew from the quality of his voice that deity was speaking to me, and that his word was, therefore, final. Balthazar Leopold Zakarian, Capitulo 87. While Melanie slipped into the nightgown, Sebastian went to the rumpled clothing on the floor near the door and scooped everything up so he could create a tidy pile on one chair. When the clock began to chime, he slid behind her and put his arms around her. The echoes of the chimes accompanied the door's opening. The king held one of the doors open, while Sebastian's cousin, Theo, held the other, and his uncle Xavier wheeled into the room. All three men had solemn expressions, and Melanie wondered if she misunderstood the things they said to her earlier. Xavier halted in front of them, the other two men standing even with his shoulders. Sebastian? I have placed my soul securely within Melanie's keeping, Sebastian responded. Xavier looked at Melanie. My nephew claims that he has taken your purity, and in return, you keep his soul. No woman is constrained to remain unwillingly. Do you accept Sebastian Guillermo Zakarian, or do you reject him? I could never reject Sebastian, Melanie said, shocked. He rolled closer and set his hand over where Sebastian's hand rested on her abdomen. He looked up at the two of them sharply. Sebastian, bring a couple of pillows over here, Xavier commanded. Melanie felt bereft for a moment when Sebastian moved away from her. He picked up two of the ornamental pillows and set them in front of her. Melanie, may I give you a blessing? Will you consent? She looked at Sebastian. His smile was reassuring. She turned to the man in the wheelchair and said, What do I do? Kneel on these pillows. Theo and I will place our hands upon your head. We will say a type of prayer over you. Melanie followed their instructions, her eyes meeting Sebastian's and feeling reassured by the love within them. Xavier's accent was more pronounced as he spoke, his blessing was in English.
Melanie Christine Andrews. Deity influences our lives in subtle ways. Since the beginning of our nation, we have felt the gentle push to fulfill the promise Zacharias made to deity, so we might feel the blessings deity promised him. Sebastian, having been born 87th in line for the throne, was never destined to wear the crown, nor to bear the burdens of being the king of Astolia. In meeting you, Melanie, Sebastian recognized you were the only woman capable of keeping his soul. It is an accepted truth that the greatest sacrifices lead to the most profound blessings. Your life together will be filled with joy. You will work with Sebastian to refine the Andastolian breed, and ultimately this work will serve the purposes of deity. You will discover peace in your decisions, and will always know that your joy in life is your reward for the willingness to sacrifice. While you leave no children here upon this planet, know that your actions will have a lasting impact on both this nation and on the greater world. Deity smiles upon you. I say these things in the light and sight of deity.
Melanie got to her feet, moved by the heartfelt hug the king gave her. Only then did she believe that Sebastian's family was glad she was with him. You will spend a week in the royal seclusion suite, Xavier said. When you are finished with your seclusion, and the spirit confirms your alliance, Sebastian will study in the temple for his elder year. After, you will both be apprenticed to the stable master, to take over his role when he retires. The squall of young Isaiah punctuated the words of the ceremony to transfer the crown from Maximiliano to his nephew. Xavier looked out at the various participants in the living drama that was the ruling family of Estolia. His heart surged with pride and love. He was proud of his son, Leo, as his brother placed the crown upon his head. Young Jackie was transformed. She was no longer an isolated young woman kept at home caring for her father, battered emotionally and psychologically. Now she was every inch the queen of Estolia. The glow of love, motherhood, and happiness colored her features and gave her the presence every queen was described as possessing. Sebastian's joy was transparent and sincere. While he grew up expecting, for the first 30 years of his life, to be king, it was clear he had no regrets as he watched the crown being placed upon Leo's head. It was a privilege to have his son become king. He was also moved by Sebastian's demeanor. He would never be king, never a father, yet his joy was as profound as Jackie's. Deity was still watching out for the sons and daughters of Zacharias. He focused on his second son, Theo. Taller than average and awkward, he would make a fine keeper. He didn't know every element of his second son's future, but his pathway in life would hold both profound happiness as well as true heart-wrenching sorrow. He closed his eyes, knowing that in some way, Deity would teach his second son a lesson he, Xavier, did not personally have the strength to learn. Perhaps, he thought, perhaps there were some lessons better not learned. He reached up and wiped away a tear as he turned his attention away from his son. The next individual he looked at was his nephew Gregory. He knew Gregory was in love with Melanie's former partner Bethany. He frowned when he saw the kiss Gregory bestowed on her. If Xavier did not act, Gregory was at risk of taking Bethany's purity well in advance of his 30th birthday. He was about to turn away, to look at some of the other members of the family, but there was something about the couple that disturbed him. After a couple of moments, he forced himself to look away. His eyes then focused on the one person guaranteed to distract him. Harmony. The impact of her sweet presence in his life hit him. This woman had exchanged souls with him. No other son of Zacharias was given the privilege and obligation of holding the soul of another. And, in holding her soul, he knew it was but a proxy to represent the souls of every Estolian who embraced the promise of Zacharias and lived their lives in accordance with the faith. She was the only woman asked to give up her soul. With the strength her soul gave him, he was able to meet the needs of all Estolians. No other Estolian was given a gift as profound as that shared by the keeper and his Kaylee, and no other Estolian was asked to make so great a sacrifice in the day-to-day running of the nation. What would be, would be. He and Harmony, and all of Estolia, could only face each challenge as they came, keeping the promise of Zacharias firmly in front of them. Deity would cushion the blows life would send, comfort the grief sure to be felt, bring hope to the hopeless, and give strength to those who needed it. He extended one hand to Harmony, and sighed as the warmth of her touch, and the sensation of his soul spread through him. Yes, they would face it, together.